Great job, everybody. You made it past week 4 in your NFL Survivor pool, and you are back with me, Statsational, here on the fastest growing, soon to be most watched show on the entire internet when it comes to Survivor pools. This is Scratching and Surviving, brought to you, of course, by the Sharp app. If you have not downloaded the Sharp app yet, check it out at sharp.app. It's going to help you become a smarter, sharper sports bettor. We've also got an ARB tool in there that maybe we'll talk about later. But check out sharp.app, use code SURVIVE, and get the discount there. All right, Survivor pools. Week 4, a little bit of chaos. More so maybe than we've had in previous weeks, but not what we were used to in last year, start of the season, where it seemed like we were knocking 20 to 30, even 40% of people out each and every week early on. It's been a little tame. Now, the big favorites did win, but if you look at a pool like Circa, 5% of the Circa participants were on the Chargers last week. They, of course, lose on the road at the Giants and knock 5% out. 3% were on Green Bay. Now, in your pool, it may differ. Some pools, ties are a loss. In some, you advance on a tie. One of the pools I am in, the Packers did lose because of the tie, so that knocked quite a few people out. So we lost about 10% of people in Circa. One of the pools I'm in was double picks last week. I know a couple of you reached out to me. You had double picks also. I wound up just taking Houston with every one of those picks and then using a different team on the other side. I mixed it up between Detroit and Buffalo and Denver. Mixed it up a little bit, had some Patriots in there as well. Wound up not losing any. So while that pool lost quite a few people, we're down to 485 entries out of about 1,350 or so, 1,380, whatever we started with, I forget. From that, we're now down to 485. So holding pretty good. I had 30 entries, down to 24, held all 24 in that one. So looking pretty good. Got some decent equity now in that pool. Over on DraftKings, I had 9 entries going into the week, started with 10, all 9 survived, did not have any Chargers in that one, so I was able to advance with no losses. So hopefully you guys are looking as good as I am right now in those pools, but we've got a long way to go. You can feel confident and feel good about yourself for surviving when there is some chaos. There are some people eliminated, but unless you're down to just a handful of people, and even if you're down to 5 people and you've got 1 entry, you still only have a 20% chance to win, right? So you feel good as we get closer to that final number of just one sole survivor, or eventually we'll chop. But we've got a long way to go, and I welcome you guys. Thank you for being here. Like I said, this is one of the fastest growing shows, if not the fastest growing show on Survivor, and I've got you guys to thank for that. So I appreciate the amount of subscriptions we've gotten, subscribes to this channel over the first 4 weeks has been insane. We have, I think, 1,100 subscribers just on these videos alone. And for a channel that's got just under 8,000 subscribers, that's a huge boost. So thank you guys very much. We appreciate that. And I know you guys are liking these videos like crazy. 400, 500 likes on a video like this. It's just an unbelievable ratio. So thank you guys. And we're going to keep bringing you the content that hopefully you guys are enjoying. I get a lot of comments, not just on what what you guys should do, or some advice on what you should, maybe the direction you should go in your pools, which I love, but now I'm getting comments where people are asking specific strategies. I want to go into one of those strategies that 2 of you actually brought up to me, which is fascinating because it never was asked to me before. And then 2 different people. I can't remember the first person. I know Stephanie, I'll give you a shout out here. Stephanie brought it up a few days ago and asked me the same question that someone else did about a week and a half or so ago. And the gentleman who runs Circa was apparently on a podcast. I did not hear it, but this was in the comments. They mentioned that they thought that it was a good strategy to this week take New Orleans and the Giants. And if you had multiple picks, of course, to take those teams who are playing against each other as a way to get rid of a really weak team and guarantee yourself to advance, of course, sacrificing one of your picks. So I just want to address that now. I don't think this is a viable strategy, certainly not at this point of the pool. It is difficult. I've racked my brain to try to figure out the math behind this, and it's so hard. Just the math in survivor pools is difficult, because there's so many variables. We just don't know what's going to happen. Every game on the schedule just about is going to have an influence over how the pool works. We don't know what the pick percentage is going to be, although we do have some idea as we look at websites like Survivor Grid to just give us a guide as to how many people are going to be on a certain team. We could do the math on what the expected probability is or the expected number of people to be eliminated in each pool. The math in that is not that difficult. But you're talking about, we just don't know what's going to happen this week, let alone future weeks. So it's going to take more of an art and a kind of a feel here to answer that question than necessarily math, although we'll use a little bit of some math here. I think what happens, if we could get down to, if we were down to just a few people in a pool and you happen to have 2 entries, I think I would start to consider that, especially as you're deep in the pool and you're at a point where most people just don't have a great option to take left in your pool. So if we're looking at a bunch of people who are forced to take a 4 or 5 point favorite, or even worse, a 3-point favorite, and now our expectation of people being eliminated becomes a lot greater, I can then see possibly taking both sides of a game. Now, it would be even more beneficial. Let me backtrack for 1 second. Our goal here obviously is to win the pool. And hardly any of you are in a position where you're going to win your pool this week, probably none of you. When we get down to the end and you've got 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, there's a chance that you're going to be able to win your pool in that week. If you are against what the other 4 take, let's say, and of course they lose, you're going to be able to win your pool and take it down. That's the objective we want. We want as many situations as possible. We want to be in that situation as much as possible to have a chance to win the pool, right? So everything else is great. We could take we're taking some teams that maybe a lot of people aren't taking early in the year. All that's doing is getting us hopefully closer to the finish line. But you'll see, and that's why I created the threshold column. We might as well just bring it up right now. Let's bring up the spreadsheet and take a look. That threshold column is going to help us when we get down to the end of the season on whether or not we should be looking. So here's that threshold column. You see Detroit here at 78.4%. Now, these are big favorites, right? So what this is saying is, and we're going to adjust this for your specific pool. You guys in the comments, when you guys get down to the nitty gritty here, you're 10 people left in a pool, 8 people left, so on and so forth. We could start looking at what your opponents have taken and try to guess as to which team they're going to be on. When we do that, we're going to be able to change these numbers to pick percentage because your pool is going to differ. And if you've got, let's say I change this number right now to, let's say 75% you estimate of your pool is going to be on Detroit. Well, even as a huge favorite, that the fact that they're going to win 82% of the time, if you had 75% of your pool on Detroit, what this threshold column is saying is basically you could take almost every other favorite. You'll want to take any team over 53% because now at this point, you've got a chance, you've got huge leverage and huge equity in the pool. Well, huge leverage, and the equity that you're hoping to get here is going to be the entire pot at that point. So the higher this pick percentage is, the greater or the lower this threshold number becomes, because it's telling you the more people on a team, the weaker the team is that you can now take as a fade. So to take that a step further, if we are going to then fade that team, if you had multiple picks, well, just because you fade that team doesn't mean you're going to win either. But if you had multiple picks and you were able to take a team, now in this case, Detroit's a large favorite this week, but let's say the majority of your pool was going to be on a 4 or 5 point favorite where they have a decent chance of losing that game. If you were to take the other side, if there were, let's say, 7 people left in your pool or 7 entries left, and you were 2 of those entries, there were 5 other entries in that pool, and you were confident all 5 of those entries were going to go on the same side. Then in that situation, I don't mind you taking that side as well and you going against that side. Let's just say it's, Miami's playing the Jets, let's say, and Miami's a 3-point favorite and you're going to take Miami in that game, and most of the pool is going to take Miami in that game. So you would have 4, let's say 5 of that 7 were going to be on Miami. That in that situation, I don't mind you taking the Jets and Miami because now you have counterfeited the rest of the pool. So if Miami wins, You're still alive. You've got your Miami pick, but you've now given yourself a chance to win the pool. If you took some random team, let's say you took a team like Jacksonville or something like that, whatever, that same week, Jacksonville is a 4-point favorite. You're the only one who could take Jacksonville. The rest of the pool can't take Jacksonville. So you know you'd be the only one on them. Well, there's no guarantee both Jacksonville and Miami are going to win. Or even if Miami loses, there's no guarantee Jacksonville wins. And we're back to everyone splitting the pot, or we revert back. A lot of pools, the rules are if everyone loses in a week and we're down to nobody, everyone gets to advance to the next week. So you can see where the advantage would be in taking the opposite team. But for this week, I just think we're in, especially in a large pool, I just don't see the advantage. I'd rather have the bullets and be able to maintain as many entries as I can. I don't think that the advantage you have is going to be great enough. Now, because what I was getting into earlier, we just don't know that 70% of the pool is going to get knocked out. If I knew 70% of the pool was going to be knocked out on, let's say, the top two teams, and let's go back to that spreadsheet, right? So we'll go to the spreadsheet and take a look and start diving into this week. So Detroit here, 82% favorite. Arizona's a 79% favorite. And Buffalo, 78% chance of winning. This is the win probability. Of course, you guys know I figured this out using the Sharp app. I take the midpoint of Pinnacle. By the way, someone did mention, why not take the DVIG line? You're 100% right. I mean, to be 100 or close to 100% accurate, the DVIG line is going to give you the best probability of a team winning. But we're talking about, fractions here. It's going to be tenths of a percent that's going to differ from just taking the midpoint. So it's really not worth the exercise. And I really want to give you guys the easiest way to come about finding this. Even if you used a VIG line, it's not going to change your process all that much. But I just wanted to touch on that. That gentleman who commented was 100% correct. All right, so you've got an 82% chance based on the midpoint here from Pinnacle of Detroit winning this game. We've got, like I said, 80%, 78%, 79%, 78% chance on these top three teams. Let's look in detail now of these games. I mean, obviously here with the 0% future value, I'm looking at small pools for that. Detroit, Arizona, or Buffalo are going to be your options. Now, Detroit and Buffalo, we know last week were the two biggest favorites and two of the strongest options in survivor pools. They won, so there's a good chance you either took Detroit or Buffalo last week in your pool. Arizona has played a fairly weak schedule to this point, and they were a very popular pick for a couple of the weeks so far, 2 of these 4 weeks. So there's a chance you've taken Arizona and either Detroit or Buffalo. So you may be in a situation in a small pool where you've only got one of these teams left. I think that choice becomes fairly easy for you, and then you're going to go ahead and just take whichever one of these teams you have left in a small pool. Again, remember, my theory here and the way I like to play it, in a small pool, I'm looking at 50, 60. I mean, you're going to have to come up with that number. Again, there's no real science to it. It's just my feel. But the more entries you have in your pool, the greater probability we're going to go 18 weeks. The greater probability we go 18 weeks, the more I want to put future value on my spreadsheet. I want to weight future value a little bit more because of that. If we're down to 20 people, the odds of us going 18 weeks, very, very slim. I just want to keep taking the best teams possible, hope that the best team that I take wins, I survive. Other people get a little tricky, and you've seen it in your pool. If you're in a small pool, I've had some of you comment, they're down to 28 people in your pool, you're down to 50 people in your pool, whatever it is. You'll see people take wacky picks. Makes absolutely no sense. If you're in a pool with 20,000 people, go ahead and take some oddball picks, right? The probability of you winning that pool is slim. Even if you make it 18 weeks, you're going to be chopping it with a whole bunch of people. So go ahead and take some risk. The odds are, if it's 20,000 people in the pool, you've got multiple picks. You're going to want, if you want to diversify here, take some of the more solid picks, safer picks, and then diversify with some of the picks that not a lot of people are going to be on. Of course, I don't mind that strategy. I like that strategy. Get yourself a little bit different. If you advance and everyone else advances, you're still at an advantage because you've now taken a weaker team. You're on a different line than most people. So in future weeks, you may be able to, again, zig when they're zagging. So there's advantages in doing that. Not as many advantages when you're in a small sized pool. So let others make the crazier picks. Let them get eliminated, hopefully, and we'll keep surviving with the highest probability. until we get to a point where we will have to make some picks on teams with a lower win probability. All right, so at 0%, these look like the obvious choices here and the strongest options in a small pool. Interesting here now, we go to 50%, and this is where the kind of number I use for a more moderate pool. Now, keep in mind, as the weeks go on, this is not just the number of entries, right, in a pool, the number of weeks left. We're still early in the season, week 5, but if we're in week 15, and we've only got 4 weeks to go, 15, 16, 17, and 18, and we've still got 2,000 people in the pool, this now becomes more of a strategy of a small pool because time is a factor here as well. So we don't want to take as many risky picks. There's not a lot of future value because there's not a lot of future. We'll get to that as we get deeper into the season. Hopefully you guys are still alive in your pool. Hopefully I'm still alive in my pools. And we could really talk about some more in-depth strategies there, hedging possibilities. Of course, a pool like Survivor Sweat, I write an article for those guys on Survivor. If you are in Circa, the Grandissimo, or a lot of these major pools, you've got the ability on their site to go ahead and sell some of your equity or sell your entire entry altogether. So we'll get into that. I think it's a little early in most pools to be thinking that way. But if you get down to a small number of people in your pool, contact me. I'll try to help you guys with hedging because it can get a little complicated. All right, so we've got these 3 teams as we've established as the top teams when it comes to small pools. Let's look at what happens here when we move this to 50%. Now, all we'll really do here is flip Arizona and Tennessee. Let me go in depth here on Arizona, and I want to do that with let's do that with Survivor Grid, okay? We'll bring up Survivor Grid. I want to take a look at what the rest of the season looks like for Arizona. I mentioned a lot of you have probably taken Arizona already. I know I have in a bunch of pools. But if you've gotten through here and have not taken Arizona, it's real tough in all formats. Even if you've got Detroit and Arizona left or Buffalo and Arizona left in a small pool, it's going to be real difficult for me to not take Arizona. Reason being, let's look at their schedule. They've got, and I made this bigger here. Someone did comment that they were having a hard time seeing. I can empathize with you. I do have a hard time seeing. I'm the guy who has to put the light on to read a menu in the at a restaurant. So I could totally understand where you're coming from. So I did make the screen bigger. Hopefully, guys, let me know down in the comments that you can see this well. But Arizona here, if you look at their upcoming games and really the rest of their season, doesn't look great. All right, I don't want to X them out. Let's see. There we go. So you've got Tennessee this week. They are 7.5, 8-point favorite, depending on the sports book. As we established, it's about an 80% chance to win. But at Indianapolis, home for Green Bay, at Dallas, at Seattle, San Francisco at home, Jacksonville at home, Tampa on the road, the Rams at home, Houston on the road, Atlanta at home, Cincinnati on the road, and the Rams at home. I mean, you can't love this schedule. There is, barring injuries, and that's the whole reason we don't like to go too deep into the future. Barring injuries, we don't know. But as of right now, there looks like there is no other chance that you're going to be taking Arizona. Keep this in mind. One thing I think I don't think about consciously often, but I had this whole conversation with my brother. We were going over Survivor pools a few days ago. And it's a very, he made a very simple but poignant point where he said, hey, we're going to have to win. I'm going to have to win 18 weeks, meaning I'm going to have to take 18 different teams. So you're really looking for the best team, the best spot to take a team. There are, 32 teams in the NFL. That means 14 of those teams we're not going to take. You're going to have to take some pretty mediocre teams, if not some bad teams at some point. Arizona record is good. Probably a fairly mediocre team, maybe a little bit better than mediocre. We're going to have to pick the best spots to take them. Now, they were in pretty good spots in a couple of these weeks earlier this year. This is their last really great spot. So I find it hard here to pass up on Arizona. Every pick that I have that does not have Arizona already taken will have Arizona this week. If they lose, they lose. But this is the spot I think you have to exhaust all of your Arizona, and that goes for small pools and large. The reason I say that in small pools as well, you're going to say, I have Detroit. And you always say take the team with the highest probability to win. That's true. I like that. But we want to take the team with the highest probability if there's no other team close to them that give us a situation that puts us in, or puts us in a better spot, better situation. So does Detroit have a better chance to win? Absolutely. We have more opportunities to take Detroit. It's not going to be the best on the road at Cincinnati. While a great spot, is not the best spot potentially for this team this year. And certainly in comparison to Arizona, there's going to be much better situations to take Detroit, one of the best teams in the league, than it will be to take Arizona. So if I've got that option, and really the same holds true here for Buffalo. And Buffalo, an even lower percentage probability here of win probability for Buffalo this week. So I want to just take Arizona. Hopefully they'll be able to handle a Tennessee team that looks terrible at home. 7.5, 8-point favorite. And we can move on. I'm done with Arizona for the year, and I'll be able to save either Detroit or Buffalo if that was your one other option. All right. So, and you look at Buffalo's schedule. I mean, they're at Carolina, which is a pretty good opportunity. Home for Tampa, I don't know if that's necessarily one that I love, but certainly we can be on that game. They're home for Cincinnati, of course. Then they're at Cleveland. You're going to have opportunities. That's the point here. And as I was scrolling, you could see Detroit's got the Giants in Week 10 at home. Looks like to be a pretty strong play there. They get Dallas at home, although Dallas looked good. Bottom line is, if you've been in survivor pools long enough, as we get to Week 9, Week 10, Week 11, the options don't become very strong. So taking Arizona here, I think, is a very worthwhile play. Let's get back to the spreadsheet here. Let's look at what we're looking at for maybe a larger pool. Does it change at all? Now, I already told you I really like Arizona in all formats because look at this future value. I mean, 17 as far as the future value number. The higher this number is, the less future value on this team. When I move this to 100%, which is what I kind of look for larger pools, I mean, there's no set rule. This is my spreadsheet. I could go to 200%. I got 20,000 people in the pool. I've got 20,000 people in the pool. Guess what? They're like, hey, take New Orleans against the Giants. They're a favorite. By the way, real interesting, on Survivor Grid, the Giants were getting more picks. They were getting over a 3% pick percentage when the Saints were getting hardly anyone on the Saints, which is mind-boggling. I mean, I get it. Look, the Giants won last week. They got the Jackson Dart. They did lose Neighbors, which is a huge, huge deal for that team. They still don't look all that great. Obviously, the Saints don't look that great. But to take that, to me, if I was just going to take that game, I'm just going to take the favorite. There's a reason they're the favorite. I went over this. I know someone didn't like the fact that I was going over wisdom of the crowds and some other things, but I like to give you guys not just you guys know, you guys who've been here for a while know that I'm not just giving you a pick. I don't see the point in me telling you, take this team or take that team because I have just as likely a chance of winning those games than you do. I don't know anymore as far as who's going to win the games than you guys do. Picking a winner for 18 weeks is near impossible. If you were watching week 1, I showed you picking optimally for what we projected the lines to be for all 18 weeks. You had a 0.3% chance of picking correctly for the entire 18 weeks. So it's a very, very difficult task. You will not be able to pick those optimal picks. So it's going to be more like 0.1, 0.2% chance of picking optimally the best you possibly can of getting all 18 picks correct. And for those of you in Circa, even tougher because you've got to pick the Thanksgiving game and, of course, the Christmas game. Circa people, of course, keep in mind Detroit plays on Thanksgiving. So a lot of people may want to save them. They are playing Green Bay, not the best opportunity to take them. But when we move to 100%, Indianapolis pops up here. Let's take a look at Indy. Let's look at their future schedule. We liked Indy when we didn't know. Indy's been playing a lot better here. They look good in that Ram game, even though they lost. They get a wacky fumble there by Mitchell going into the end zone. Maybe that game is different if he doesn't turn the ball over, celebrating a little too early. But Indianapolis here, if we look at Survivor Grid, let's just look at what their future looks like on the Survivor Grid, if I could bring that up. But they do have a little bit better future here than Arizona does. And, of course, their line is not as good this week. So when we look, they're going to be home to Tennessee. What week is that? Week 8. They're home to Tennessee. It seems like Tennessee is going to be the team we're going to be picking on quite a bit. And I would think right now that projected line is 6.5. Tennessee is a worse team than Vegas. If they were playing it this week, Indianapolis would probably be closer to a 10-point favorite in that game. So keep that in mind. I mentioned last week that Survivor Grid's looking at the future lines, but they're not always going to be accurate. You've got to make that determination yourself. But we can see just in a few weeks, we're going to have a chance to take Indianapolis just there. Not the easiest of schedules outside of that, but that game here against Tennessee is one that you may want to keep them for. If you're in a large pool, super large pool, and you've got a bunch of entries, I have absolutely no problem here with taking a few on Indianapolis. You can see they're getting 16.7% of the of picks right now on them, so they're not exactly a team that people are shying away from, but they probably won't be one of the top two teams. That'll probably be Arizona and Detroit this week. Of course, in Circa, where people may be saving Detroit and may have already taken Arizona, I think a lot of people will, in fact, get on Indianapolis. So those of you in Circa, keep that in mind. It may not be as good of a play, I don't think, as we get a little bit more pick percentage there. So in your pool, however, if you're in just a regular old pool, it's got a lot of people, you got 5,000 people left in your pool, something like that, I think Indianapolis is worth a look. I mentioned Buffalo here. Look, if they're your only option out of Arizona and Detroit, you are going to get a fairly low pick percentage because a lot of people have taken them already. It's not a bad leverage play here, especially in smaller pools, as we mentioned. The Rams at home for San Francisco this week. Let's go back. Well, let's go over quickly here some of the top teams. Let's look at the teams that people are getting some pick, or teams are getting some pick percentage on. 7.6% on Minnesota right now. Minnesota with a 63% chance to win. They're at Cleveland. You guys know I don't love these spots. Let me just jump in here quick on road teams. Someone made a comment about road teams. I don't think it was necessarily directed at me, although I really don't care if it was, because I was not promoting a road team last week. But they were talking about these so-called experts who are giving us advice on taking road teams. And then, of course, a road team in the Chargers go and lose. I run the numbers. Road teams and home teams who are at the same spread are going to win at about the same rate. So the road and the home is taken into account in the point spread. This is what I try to get across to you guys all the time. Divisional matchups, home and the road, injuries, anything that is public knowledge is baked into the point spread. And that was my whole diatribe that I went on about wisdom of the crowds, right? So a few of you have very little attention span, but for those of you who want to actually learn a little something, and that's the way I am when I watch videos on any topic, I'm there to watch. I prefer videos that I can learn something on. If someone suggests a book, I run out and read it, because if I like the person that I'm watching and I like the content and I think they know a little bit of something and they suggest something for me to read, I want to read it because I want to know what they know and I want to understand their perspective. So I mentioned wisdom of the crowds because the NFL market is, especially the sides and totals, it's the ultimate wisdom of the crowd. And the crowd is right more often than not. And over time, that's how the point spread works, not because someone in Vegas is inventing a number. Although, yes, they have computer models that come up with the initial point spread, but the line moves based on the public. More importantly, really, the sharp money. Sharp money is going to move lines more than the public is. I'm not going to get into how lines move, but just understand it's an extremely liquid market, and that line finds an equilibrium at some point. That equilibrium is going to hold over time, has held true, where that 80% probability that Detroit's going to win this week, it's going to hold true over time that if they play this game 1,000 times, Detroit will win it 80% of the time, because that's been historically what has happened in the NFL. So if you look at home teams, they win. If they're a 6 to 8 point favorite, they have won over the last 22 seasons that I went back and looked. They've won it about, I think it was 72 or 73% of the time outright. If you take road teams of the same spread, they are 6 to 8 point favorites on the road. They have won at about a 76% clip. Now, of course, there are less of those, so it's a little smaller sample, but they've actually won at a higher rate than those who are at home. So that whole theory, it's what people, I just despise when people have a narrative or a theory and they don't have numbers to actually back it up. And you can show people the actual numbers, tell it to them. They can do your own research. I mean, go look it up yourself. And yet they will still argue the point because this is what they've grown up knowing. Hey, road teams just don't win as often. That is true. That's why it's baked into the line. And if they were at home, they would have been a favorite by, instead of 6, they'd be a 10-point favorite. So that's the difference. All right, guys. So that is going to be it here for this week. I think we've gone over a lot. As you know, most of the work is not here in the video. It's done down in the comments. I get a ton of them. I try to answer all you guys. Try not to message me like an hour before the games on Sunday. And of course, we have an early game as well again this week, international game in London, I believe. Try not to message me right before the games because I am extremely busy between DFS, all the pools that I have, making sure my survivor bets are in and picks are in, actual sports betting, prop betting. I've got a lot going on Sunday mornings. I do a show. So there's a lot to do on Sunday, so I may miss your comments. So get those comments in early. I love them. I learned from them. Like I said, you guys came up with that question about taking opposite teams. I went days here analyzing it and trying to rack my brain to figure out which side I would lean on there. I love that kind of stuff. I love the puzzle that is Survivor Pool and all sorts of betting. So I thank you guys again. Give me a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed this content. As always, I appreciate all of you for being here each and every week. Let's try to do it again this week, survive, and get to week 6 in our Survivor pools. Good luck, everybody. I'll see you next week.